threats against North Korea, and China is not going to rein in North Korea, but with those threats, Trump could take place or could take action against North Korea very soon, and it could have World War III consequences. I'm very, very concerned.
Gorsuch was just approved to the Supreme Court. I guess they used the nuclear option to get that done, only needing 51 votes. We'll have details of that for you. We can put the article on screen for any TV viewers that are out there watching us. If you're a radio listener, you can always tune in via Infowars.com/show. There it is. Neil Gorsuch confirmed by Senate as Supreme Court Justice. And we'll scroll down and read some of that article for, again, the TV viewers. Judge Neil M. Gorsuch was confirmed by the Senate on Friday to become the 113th Justice of the Supreme Court, capping a political brawl that lasted for more than a year and tested constitutional norms inside the Capitol, fraying upper chamber. The development was a signal triumph for President Trump, or single triumph campaign last year, rested in large part on his pledge to appoint another committed conservative to succeed Justice Anthony Scalia, who died in February 2016, very suspiciously, I should add. Let me just stop right there because I want to go to our next guest, and I'm going to punch out for a while, work on some things and come back, David. I'll leave everybody here with able hands. I'll be back this Sunday, of course, 4 to 6 p.m. Live. But it's not Hillary picking the Supreme Court, and I know folks that were involved with Trump. He had a computer with the most conservative votes and had a bunch of big firms look at it, 3 different firms. And he wanted to put in Napolitano later, but said, well, I guess you're not on the list. You'll have to be the second round. That's big news for folks, but I'll just tell you. So, bigger economy, control the border, a lot of good stuff happening, but neocons and al-Qaeda celebrating what happened in Syria, a clear false flag. Joel Skousen was on with us the day it happened. We had reporters on the ground, absolutely a false flag. Ron Paul, 100% false flag. He's never that sure. Rand Paul, I mean, the same group's been caught staging it. Why would Assad, right as he's winning, right as the U.S. is defeating al-Qaeda and ISIS, pushing them into Iraq in a pincer attack from the east and the west, why would he do the one thing that's the red line for Trump? Trump knows that, so it makes him look good with the Chinese president. Now he doesn't look like he's allied with Russia. Maybe it opens up detente. A very Machiavelli move. I understand Machiavellian systems, but they always turn to evil, like the Ring of Mordor, to use a parable from Lord of the Rings. It'll give you the power to win, but only a couple moves. Then it brings in the curse, just like Nazi Germany or anything else. So Joel Skousen, former Marine Corps fighter pilot, naval aviator, a military officer in the Marine Corps, and, of course, one of the leading patriot families for almost 70 years fighting the globalist. And so he's got all the sources. We'll get his take. And, David, you take over. I know David is chomping at the bit here. So, Joel Skousen, good to have you here.
Good to be with you, Alex and David.
Well, you've heard my ranting. You've heard my analysis and David's, perhaps. What's your take on the current situation?
Well, I'm frankly going to have to disagree with the proposition that Trump hasn't bought into this. I think he's been totally snookered by this false flag incident. And I have read every statement. I don't care whether he's on the teleprompter or speaking off the cuff. Yeah, I can see, complete buying into this on his part. And this is a very sad story because it means, when his meeting at Mar-a-Lago with Bannon, Bannon was totally for the strike on Syria. You just cannot explain this by Machiavellian techniques saying, I'm going to go out and destroy people just so that I can, advance. I'm just very frustrated by the fact that Donald Trump...
Well, I'm not endorsing Machiavelli. I see how this actually works for him. And so I don't think the neocons and stuff realize was just what's happened. But you're saying he believes his general so much, you may be right. He has a love affair with the military that they may have given him fake intelligence?
Absolutely. They assured him. And McMaster's assured him, absolutely, this was the Syrians who did it. And what they failed to see, and which has come out from the Russians, which is very, very good intelligence, is that the Syrians had stockpiled chemical weapons in this arms factory, and it was a secondary explosion from the attack from the Syrians on the arms factory. The Syrians didn't know that there were chemical weapons there, but it wasn't technically a false flag attack, meaning that the Syrians didn't explode, the rebels didn't explode the weapons, trying to blame it. It just simply got caught up in the attack on their arms factory. So this surprised the globalists. This is something they had to move a crisis and take advantage of it right off the cuff, because this was not a planned false flag attack. It turns out to be a false attribution to Assad. And I covered in today's World Affairs Brief all the history of the false accusations of Assad using chemical weapons, how chemical weapons are a broad-based area weapon that are never in military tactics, used in a close urban conflict situation with civilians, because it's non-discriminatory. There's no way, with Assad knowing that the establishment is looking for a way to kill him, to blame him, that he would use chemical weapons where there's no military advantage to do so. I just can't believe that none of the military experts on television have brought this up. It's just a cover-up of massive proportions. But I'm frankly worried that once Trump gets on this bandwagon and say, I'm going to attack, he goes through with it. And so I'm thinking that with his threats against North Korea, and China is not going to rein in North Korea, but with those threats, Trump could take place or could take action against North Korea very soon, and it could have World War III consequences. I'm very, very concerned.
You know, Joel, this is David Knight. Alex Jones is gone now. We'll finish up this interview together. When you said that you were concerned that Donald Trump had bought into this, I am too, because what we've seen is a pattern of Donald Trump going out and getting the people that he believes are experts in all these different fields, and then stepping back and saying, I'm going to approach this from a pragmatic standpoint. I'm not ideological about this, and let them take the lead on this. And of course, Michael Savage has said, look, these are the generals now that are leading us into this escalated conflict and regime change in Syria, escalation of the Cold War with Russia. He said we saw the same thing with Woodrow Wilson, and pushing this type of agenda, somebody who came in saying, well, I'm going to put America first and whatever we're going to, and then turn into a globalist. That's what I'm really concerned about. But you said one thing that I thought was interesting. In terms of the way the attack came out. We talked to Syria girl yesterday, and she was saying that a day prior to the attack, Gulf-based Orient TV announced, quote, tomorrow we are launching a media campaign to cover the airstrikes on Hama countryside, including the usage of chemical warfare against civilians. I mean, they're tipping this out a day ahead of time. We see that there's not going to be any forensic investigation. There's not going to be any debate in Congress. Instead, they move immediately with a solution that they have pre-planned. This is what looks like so much like a false flag. I have people pushing back when I talk about this on Twitter saying, you see everything as a false flag. It's like, well, when they talk about it in advance and say, tomorrow this is going to happen, and they've already got a pre-planned solution, they've already identified the culprit, when you can't identify somebody that quickly, that's the thing that concerns me. It's got these types of deliberate fingerprints all over it.
Well, I published that report from InfoWars in today's World Affairs Brief, that they had foreknowledge of that. But the only solution, you know, as a military analyst on that, it would be to say that they have to wait, because they had video of seeing the aircraft, the Syrian aircraft come in, dropping their bombs, and then the chemical weapons exploding. You know, either they had to time it where they set these off manually in concert with the coming attack, which perhaps they knew about. Perhaps they were inducing this attack and planned to blow this up. But that's a tricky thing to do from a military standpoint. I think it's much more plausible to believe that foreknowledge referred to the fact we know they're going to attack our arms factory, and in the process, those chemical weapons are going to blow up, and it's going to cause a massive amount of deaths. And that's what I really think happened.
I agree. Now, in terms of justification, we saw Donald Trump and Nikki Haley talking about babies and so forth, and we've seen this all with the first Gulf War, and that was false. The fact that we were told babies were being taken out of incubators by an evil dictator, and then we found out that that was entirely rigged. We talk about Donald Trump said the slow, agonizing death. Well, you know, we had 500,000 children die of slow, agonizing deaths, and that was our sanctions against Iraq. We also have the example that we had in Stockholm today of what is going to really be the consequences of this in the long term. You want to speak to that and talk about also what you think is going to happen, what effect this is going to have on our relationship with Russia?
Well, let's talk about the Russia thing, too. Now, Trump, of course, as you know, did warn the Russians in advance. This was to avoid too many casualties or any casualties all among the Russian advisors, so he didn't want to have an escalation of this conflict. What that indicates, and it also ended up meaning very few Syrian casualties, although there were some involved in this. But what it means is that Trump wanted to make a statement rather than start a war. And of course, the Russian reaction with this is to cut off any coordination on air support for this war in Syria. They're also bringing in more anti-aircraft systems. You know, I wondered, first of all, why didn't Russia respond knowing in advance? Why didn't they shoot down any of these Tomahawk missiles? I mean, the U.S. threw 59 of them at this airbase. That I knew from a military pilot preserve. That's really overkill. These things are over $1 million a piece.
Yeah, $1.5 million. That's about $90 million that he spent there. I guess we should all go out and get some stock in Raytheon right now. They're going to go shooting up. They'll be replacing these.
Well, here's my take on this. Those Tomahawk missiles aren't being produced anymore, and I think they do have accuracy problems. So I think in one aspect, there's two aspects, but one is that they wanted to use up existing inventory, so they threw nearly 60 of these things out. Secondly, they knew that Russia's S-400 system has very expensive interceptors. They don't have 60 reloads for those S-400 systems, and so they wanted to send a barrage in there so that Russia would say, hey, we can't possibly stop this attack. We're going to let it fall. Interestingly, Russia has documented that most of those cruise missiles missed their target. They only end up destroying three MiG-23 jets. Wow. And those were under repair. So essentially it was a net negative. They didn't even crater the runway.
That's what happens when you do Wag the Dog. We're talking to Joel Skousen.
Threats against North Korea, and China is not going to rein in North Korea. But with those threats, Trump could take place or could take action against North Korea very soon, and it could have World War III consequences. I'm very, very concerned.
Gorsuch was just approved to the Supreme Court. I guess they used the nuclear option to get that done, only needing 51 votes. We'll have details of that, I should add. Let me just stop right there because I want to go to our next guest, and I'm going to punch out for a while, work on some things, and come back, David. I'll leave everybody here with able hands. I'll be back this Sunday, of course, 4 to 6 p.m. Live. But it's not Hillary picking the Supreme Court, and I know folks that were involved with Trump. He had a computer with the most conservative votes and had a bunch of big firms look at it, 3 different firms. And he wanted to put into Napolitano later, but said, well, I guess you're not on the list. You'll have to be the second round. That's big news for folks, but I'll just tell you. So, bigger economy, control the border, a lot of good stuff happening, but neocons and Al-Qaeda celebrating what happened in Syria, a clear false flag. Joel Skousen was on with us the day it happened. We had reporters on the ground, absolutely a false flag. Ron Paul, 100% false flag. He's never that sure. Rand Paul, I mean, the same group's been caught staging it. Why would Assad, right as he's with the Supreme Court, capping a political brawl that lasted for more than a year and tested constitutional norms inside the Capitol, fraying upper chamber? The development was a signal triumph for President Trump, or single triumph campaign last year, rested in large part on his pledge to appoint another committed conservative to succeed Justice Anthony Scalia, who died in February 2016. Very suspicious. Before we can put the article on screen for any TV viewers that are out there watching us, if you're a radio listener, you can always tune in via Infowars.com/show. There it is. Neil Gorsuch confirmed by Senate as Supreme Court Justice, and we'll scroll down and read some of that article for, again, the TV viewers. Judge Neil M. Gorsuch was confirmed by the Senate on Friday to become the 113th Justice of